Let's focus on the Keypad Setup screen. So this is where we tell the system which keypads we're going to be using. The way that I got that open is to go to Add-ins, click a pad, Setup, and then across to Keypads. Once the software finds your receiver, it will show it here. So this is the serial number of the device, which can be found on a sticker on the back of your receiver. And in this example, it already knows what keypads I usually use because it's not the first time that I've used that receiver. So my lowest keypad number is 1 and my highest is 5. For anyone new to using the system, what you need to know here is every keypad has a number label on the back of it. So just check that this matches with the keypads that you've got. It doesn't necessarily have to start from 1. So in most cases, people only own one system and their lowest keypad will be 1. But what if you own 2 systems? Maybe you've got 2 systems with 20 keypads in each, and we've numbered those as 1 to 20 for the first system and 21 to 40 for the second system. You would just change that here. If you're using the second one, you would change the lowest number from 1 to being 21. Oh, not 221, 21. Okay, so then our highest number for this system is 40. So easy enough to change, just make sure it matches what you've got. To explain why you might have systems starting at different numbers, the main reason for that is you might want to be able to use each of those 2 systems separately, but when you've got a bigger meeting, perhaps you want to combine them all together, just plug in one receiver and then you would run it from 1 through to 40 and you can use all of those together. So that's the basic bit that everybody needs to do when they're setting up their system. So you tell it what keypad numbers you've got, and then you go to the test button here and you simply grab your keypads and press a number on them. So you can see that a couple of the keypads have voted, so you will see those filling up as you press buttons, and mine are all in random order. So pop your votes in like so, and once you can see all of these are full up, then you know that your system's good. It's got a little count here as well, so we can see we've only tested 3 out of our full set of 40. So once all 40 are tested, we would then close this screen down. So I'm just going to exit out of there now, and we'll go and have a look at some of the options that are on this screen. So the first thing that I want to have a look at is this section here. So keypad beep, what that does is it enables a little audio alert whenever somebody votes. So imagine you've got 300 people at a conference and all of their keypads are beeping. It can be really quite noisy, but there are times where it can be useful to have that confirmation where it's essential that votes go through. So all that you do is drop this down and choose single tone. Multi-tone will do a different noise for each number that's pressed, which can be even more distracting if there's a lot of them. So just go with single. So that's one for you to try. In general, we leave that switched off. The auto off period, you can see that that's grayed out at the moment, and that's because we aren't using the middle section. So we'll come back to that. Let's just stick with where we are for the moment. This one here, presenter keypad, this is a different keypad type that doesn't come as standard in the system, so you may not have ordered one of these. So this is very similar to using a standard PowerPoint clicker where you just plug a little receiver into a USB port and then you can present from anywhere in the room by just clicking your backwards and forwards arrows. So the ClickerPad version of that does the same job, but you don't need to plug in a second receiver because you've already got your ClickerPad receiver plugged in for your keypads. So it uses that. So handy if you're limited on number of USB ports, but it also has some extra functions. For example, you can use it to jump to a specific slide number. You can also adjust your system volume using it as well, and you can restart votes. So if you've got one of those, you just need to make sure that you tick to allow the presenter keypad to work. So again, for most people, we'd expect that to be unticked. So moving across to the detector and sentry, again, they're devices that don't come in the standard package, so you may not have ordered these. The detector is to help you find a lost keypad within the room. So what it will do, and I won't go into full details because it won't apply to everybody at this stage, but what it will do is the number on the LED will change according to how close to the lost keypad you are. The sentry is a bit like a shop alarm. If somebody walks past the exit where the sentry device is, it will cause the keypad to beep. So that's what these are all about. So if you don't have those devices, you don't need to enable either of these, and therefore this is going to be grey. So if I enable it, I can now choose when the keypad's turned back off. So that's kind of all there is to say about that at this point. These advanced options, again, are unnecessary for you to change. But what might be interesting for you is this one here, the pop-up display. So what that does is when you've got a vote open, let's say you're expecting 40 votes, you've got 40 people in the room, and you get to the point where you've received 35 of those votes, for example, you can show the keypad numbers on screen that we're waiting for. So it'll just bring up a little box that says waiting for, and then the device numbers will be shown in that box. So you decide when does it show that and how many keypad numbers does it show in one go. So you might say I'm going to have that showing right from the start with all 40, but that would be a huge list of keypad numbers showing up, hence this second one being show how many, and you can set a scrolling display so that it keeps moving. That can be slightly distracting, so I tend to keep it to only showing when the last few are going to vote. So let's say we're doing a little training session and we've just got 12 people. I would probably have that showing the final 3 keypads. So once 9 of them are voted, who are the 3 that haven't? But there is a way to manually decide when to pop that up as well. So this is going to do it on every vote when you get to the point we're down to the last 3. If we turn that off, what we can do instead is when we want to display those keypad numbers during a vote, you just press the letter K on your keyboard and that will pop it up at will. So you can override this anyway. So let's just pop that back onto 3 and 3. And then this section here, fairly rarely used, but this is when you need to get through a lot of content in a short time, I guess, really, because what we can do here is choose to have the vote close automatically once we have received as many votes as we need. So you could say that in your large audience, once we've got 90% of the votes in, that would be a representative sample and you just want to close it and move on. So you just adjust that on the slider here. Most commonly though, we just leave that set exactly as it is now with manually close vote. So what that means is the vote will not close down until you click to advance. So when you're advancing through your slides, that can either be on a standard presentation clicker, on the presenter keypad that I mentioned here, or most likely you've got the laptop in front of you and you're just going to advance using your enter key, your space bar, or your right arrow. So however you would normally go to the next slide or animation. So that's the kind of basics of what you can see on the screen there. So let's have a look at some other scenarios. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to plug in another receiver. So we'll have to just give it a moment for it to see that and then click on refresh. And now you can see we've got 2 different serial numbers. So I've got 2 receivers attached and my second receiver automatically said that the lowest keypad is 1 and the highest is 40. And that's because that's what we've set here. So if both receivers are on the same radio channel, then these will both come up with the same numbers. So whatever I do in the first one will be copied down to the second one. And if I go and adjust that first one now, it will also adjust it in the second one. If for any reason you need to use 2 different channels, so you've got 2 sets of keypads on 2 different channels, then they'll work independently. So we're not going to cover channels at this point. If that's something that you feel you might need to be able to do, contact us and we can go into the detail with you on how to do that. But for now, let's just assume that you're working with two receivers, both on the same channel. So you can see I've changed my lowest number to 5 and I'm going to change my highest number to 75, and that's adjusted for both. So that's how that works. Now what I'm going to do now is just create a bit of an error. I'm going to remove the USB cable for the second receiver, and I'm going to come out of this window and we're just going to go into it again so that you can see the difference. So I've received there a warning message that it can't find one of the receivers. Well, that's right, because I just unplugged it. So let's go back to Setup Keypads and see how it looks now. And we've only got one receiver in there. If we were to also disconnect the second receiver, we'll have a slightly different outcome. So I'm just going to unplug that one now and refresh again. And it remembers that it was previously looking for both of these receivers. But the big difference you'll notice here is these are red. So even if you're only ever using one receiver, this is still relevant for you because the background of that first receiver is red. Red is not good. It means it can't see it. If I click on one of these ones, the only option that I get is to remove it. So if I want to use serial number that ends 152 but not 150, that's fine. I just go on 150 and click remove, and that's that one sorted out. But what are we going to do about the first one? Basically, there's no buttons or anything on the receiver. So the way that you reset a receiver to force it to see it is to unplug it and plug it in again. So I'm just going to plug it back in, wait for a moment, click refresh, and it's now not red because it can see it. And again, we could go and change those numbers if we wanted to. So the final thing to look at on the Keypad Setup screen is the remote setup. And I'm not going to go into full details here, but just so that you know what this is for if you're using smartphones or laptops to cast votes as well as your ClickerPad keypads or instead of your ClickerPad keypads. So there's a whole separate set of instructions because you need to set up a meeting on the remote voting portal first, and then this button is to link to those existing meetings that you've already got set up. So just to give you an idea of what that's all about, I've used it on another computer, so that's one thing to remember. You can only use your login on one computer at a time. The last time I used it, it was on a different device. So I'm going to say yes, I can kick that one out because I know I'm not using it now. So I'll say yes on that. And then it's going to go and try and retrieve the details for me. So that's the account that I use for my online voting, and these are the meetings that I've currently got set up. So all I've got to do is click on which meeting I want to connect, and that's me all sorted for online voting. But obviously there is the whole instruction of setting the meetings up, so we'll cover that completely separately to this. So that is your little tour of the Keypad Setup method and what's in there. So essentially taking it from the beginning and making it very simple if you are a new user, we go to add-ins, ClickerPad, Setup, Keypads, and the only thing that we would normally do is ensure that it's showing you the right lowest and highest keypad number. If you've never set it up before, it will just say dash dash and you type over those dashes. If you have used the system before, it will remember what your settings were last time. So there's really nothing to do at this stage other than click on the test button, open that grid up and press buttons on keypads to make sure they all work. And the rest of it, most likely you won't need to change at all.